Hello, federal employees. This is Sierra with Plan Your Federal Retirement. Thank you for joining me on today's Follow-Up Friday, where I will be covering the highlights and action items from this week's episode. In episode 87, Micah and our special guest advisor, Christian Sakamoto, discuss irreversible mistakes after death. Christian is very passionate about this subject, and Micah agrees that it cannot be talked about enough. Second to taxes. Micah emphasized that this is a key thing that we start with our clients. People tend to think that's done because they've mentally thought about it and they've worked towards it a little bit. But either they haven't done it all the way or they don't have it correct on what they want. So they discuss irreversible mistakes that happen when you pass away. Most of the time when we're working with our clients, we can see this in advance and fix problems. But sometimes when we're working with a client, their loved one has passed away and they either don't have control, or we have a new client come to us when someone passes away and we can't really change what has already been done. So it's really important to spend the time, energy, and effort to make sure it's set up correctly. Christian restates this beautifully. While we're working with our clients and they are still alive, we have the opportunity to work on this together and plan ahead, as opposed to working on the other side of things when we're trying to put out fires with irreversible decisions. Micah brings up timelines and asks Christian if he can set up a timeline of what to do when someone passes away. Christian first brings up the TSP and says that there is actually a 90-day rule with the TSP. Micah explains that the 90-day rule from the TSP says that after they've been notified of the death, then they will move the money out of the TSP participant's name into a different beneficiary or inherited account. Then they will notify the beneficiaries that they have 90 days to tell the TSP what they're going to do with that money. If the beneficiary doesn't tell the TSP what they're going to do, the TSP does a forced liquidation and sends a check for the entire amount, and there is no undo button. And when you take the money out of TSP, then there are tax implications with the IRS, so this could be a bad option. Christian brings up another timeline, which is a 9-month rule for beneficiaries. You have 9 months for notifying whatever account it is coming from, TSP, an IRA, etc., if it's going to be a trust. Micah brings up that he and his wife are primaries, and then their trust is a contingent beneficiary. This means that if Micah and his wife both pass away, they have 9 months to give the custodian trust documents to say what you would like to do with the money. Even if you have had your accounts for many years with the custodian and believe that you've already submitted your trust documents to them, it is really important that you reach out to them and ensure that they have the trust documents, or else it will not satisfy the 9-month rule. Micah asks about taxes and when a tax return is due when someone has passed away. Christian confirms that it is still the same as us, the April 15th deadline. And if you file for an extension, a 6-month extension, then it would be October 15th. Micah also brings up that not everyone has a state tax return, and those could have different deadlines, and that's something to keep in mind as well. Normally, there is always a need for an individual tax return. Micah emphasizes that even if there isn't a requirement from the IRS, that he is a huge fan of filing a final tax return because you start the clock on the statute of limitations. Now, the IRS has only 3 years for the statute of limitations to run out. Micah then also brings up required minimum distributions, RMDs. Christian says that once RMDs start, they cannot stop. Micah asks, but the person is dead. Christian answers that whoever inherits the account, the rule states that the RMDs have to continue. The rules are a little different for a spouse inherited account versus the account coming from either like a parent or a sibling, for example. Micah brings up the word rollover and says that we need to remove that from our vocabulary and only use the word transfer. Micah states that this is because most of the time we actually mean transfer, and that is your intention. Christian talks about the 3 main estate planning documents that are needed. The first 2 are applicable when we are still alive, but in a situation where we're incapacitated, and that is when they would kick in. The first one is called an advanced healthcare directive. It's sometimes referred to as a living will. And the second one is a durable power of attorney. The Advanced Healthcare Directive is for healthcare-related decisions and making some of those decisions in advance and taking some of the burden off of our loved ones. The durable power of attorney is a very powerful document and can be used without incapacitation if you add a rule to it. Otherwise, it is only applicable during incapacitation. This document is more for the financial related situation side, to be able to help pay the bills on your behalf or even have access to your accounts. Christian then talks about the third document coming into effect when you pass away, and that is called your last will and testament. He explains that the will is a backstop to direct where you want your stuff to go through the probate process. Micah discussed the order of operations and says that things are first transferred by title and how it's owned. Micah brings up that this is where a trust can be super powerful because it can come in right at the titling level. Number 2 is the beneficiary designations. As a federal employee, you have 4 beneficiary designations: your last paycheck, your TSP, your FIGLY, and your pension. Your spouse can't be joint on these things, so they have to be a beneficiary. Micah mentions that you should always have a primary beneficiary and a contingent beneficiary. Your primary beneficiary being your spouse, and then your contingent beneficiary in case something happens to you both. The last order of operation is that everything goes through probate, and probate is a state process, and that is where your will comes in. Christian asks, is it possible to pass away and not go through the probate process? Micah says that yes, if you have everything titled correctly and your beneficiaries are correct as well. Christian mentions that there's a fourth possible document depending on your situation that you could need. That is a revocable or irrevocable living trust. Then that will also avoid the probate process as well. One of the negative things about going through probate is that it's a public process, but the trust is not public. Also, the trust is timely and can speed things along, and Christian really likes it for that reason. Micah brings up that they want to talk about where things go wrong. Micah mentions that you shouldn't always listen to the estate planning attorney when it comes to income taxes. Sometimes the client hears things incorrectly, and it's not that the estate planning attorney said anything wrong. Here's a story, and that goes that someone passed away, there's X amount of inheritance, and the client asks the attorney, are there any taxes? The estate attorney says that there are no taxes on this. So the client thinks, great. The client hears no taxes and that things are good to go. However, the estate attorney said that there were no estate taxes. There are different types of taxes, and there are also income taxes. Another example that Christian brought up were clients who had a blended family, and he noticed that the beneficiaries were that if the wife passed away, everything goes to the husband. But if the husband passed away, then everything went to his children. One of the spouses was disinheriting all of their kids by accident. So it's super important to look at things and confirm that they are what you wish to happen. This podcast is all about action items for our listeners. First action item, Micah says that you should review your documents, read them, and see if they actually say what you remember them saying. 2, Christian's action item is that if you don't have these documents, then go get them taken care of. The Advanced Healthcare Directive, Durable Power of Attorney, and the Last Will and Testament. 3rd, Micah's second action item is to review your beneficiary designations and to have them in your personal possession. 4, re-listen to the original episode to hear the great conversation between Micah and Christian. And 5, share this podcast with a friend. With your help, we can achieve our goal of helping 1 million federal employees just like you. Until next time, happy planning.